Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades, happy new week. Didn't come to you with a Monday show yesterday because we had a Sunday show, a special presentation of Steph's most controversial chapter lecture, which she's giving to a special group on Ask Your Husband. This one was called Wear What He Likes, Do What He Likes. Go watch that video if you haven't. It was Sunday's video. We don't always do a Sunday video, but man, is it special for the channel to have Steph able to just lift from her class and provide it for public consumption. It's just special content because there's a war out there in the laity. You know this if you're on Twitter. It is for the soul of the family, which means women go back home, be beautiful, be supportive. Men, insist that your women do this and be good. That's how we take back the laity. And that's really my wheelhouse. All this talk about Pope Francis, Tucho Fernandez, the Holy See, the crackdown on the Latin Mass, Fiducia supplicans, the October Synod. I hate doing these shows. I hate doing these shows. The more of you guys watch these shows than anything, and it is a part of this channel's ministry, and it has been since I've been out for 5 years. I love doing that which is medicinal and badly needed for the family. Patriarchy stuff, any of the other three pillars of this channel, subsidiarity, right-wing community organizing, how to homeschool, how to do schooling correct, don't go to college. I love all that. That's my passion. Bagging on Pope number 266 is not. But there's always news. There's just always news. So last week I was like, I'm not doing any Francis shows. Stick a fork in me. I'm done for Francis shows, at least for the week. And I missed a bunch of stuff such that now there is automatic Fiducia supplicans fallout update, and I just can't skip it permanently. Edward Penton tweeted yesterday regarding, and this is a quote from Pope Francis, regarding criticisms of Fiducia supplicans, those who vehemently protest belong to small ideological groups. Those who don't like Fiducia are part of small ideological groups, to which everyone and their grandma replied, holy cow, how do you say something like that, Pope Francis? Like the continent of Africa? Like the continent of Africa. Pope Francis knew he had to carve out some sort of cope, some sort of exceptional explanatory for this huge continent which has wholesale rejected Fiducia supplicans and its sexual ethics revolution. So he described the church in Africa, according to Edward Penton, as a, quote, special case. Why is Africa a, quote, special case? This is like saying, you know, the majority of people actually hate ice cream. And then your interlocutor goes, I'm pretty sure almost everyone, at least in America, loves ice cream. And he goes, well, it's just fringe groups that like it. And you're like, what are you calling fringe groups? And they're like, well, carve out, take an exception for, overweight white people. Don't count them, even though they're like the main group that love ice cream, overweight white people. And you're like, okay, well, they're not a fringe group. Yeah, I said that. They're not a fringe group. But if you cut them out, it's only fringe groups that love ice cream. Well, yeah, you can do anything to your demographic categories and then say only fringe groups love something that virtually everyone loves. That's what he's done here. Well, they're a special case. That's why I'm not counting them as one of the fringe groups who reject Fiducia, because pretty much every faithful Catholic along with every serious-minded Protestant Christian or Eastern Orthodox Christian is like, what are you doing? Pretty much everyone. It's only a group of left Caths together with Pope-splainers that pretend to love Fiducia supplicans. But these Africans, who should not be considered one of the fringe groups, because like every African in Africa, for them, direct quote from Francis, Homo sapienism, wink, is something ugly from a cultural point of view. They do not tolerate it. Wait, what? I don't get it. Well, I don't get it. So we're setting aside African Catholics who are known for their fidelity to the teachings of the faith. We're going to set them aside because for them, murder's wrong. Well, yeah, that's a very mainstream position. That's a very doctrinally concomitant thing to say because murder is wrong in the Roman Catholic faith. But Francis says, well, no, for them, they're fringe, but they're a large fringe group, and I'm dealing with them as such because for them, Homo sapienism is something ugly. They don't tolerate it. Well, no Christian tolerates it. It is for a Christian something ugly. However, he added, I trust that gradually everyone will be reassured about the spirit of the declaration, Fiducia supplicans, which aims to include, not divide. It invites us to welcome and then entrust people and to trust in God. Now, that's much more typical Francis speak. You're used to this kind of hokum. Well, I aim to include, not divide. Those are usually transitive verbs, Pope Francis. Include who? Oh, Homo sapiens. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we should include them. But except we shouldn't do so by embracing their sin, which you've done. He loves using transitive verbs intransitively. I aim to include. Include whom? We need a direct object there. He's letting your imagination fill in the gaps. The Fiducia supplicans invites us to welcome. Welcome whom? Also a transitive verb. Where is the direct object? It invites us to welcome and then entrust. Oh, people. That's who. There is a direct object there. And to trust in God. That's what we're used to from Francis, but the big marquee statement that he made is this idea that for them, for Africans, murder is wrong. That's why we have to kind of set them aside and deal with them with kid gloves. Walk on eggshells around them. For them, rape, murder, robbery is wrong. That's weird. For most Christians, Fiducia supplicans is a good thing because for most Christians, Homo sapienism is not something ugly. I'm just reasoning from by dint of what he said about the Africans here. It's not something ugly, evidently, for most Christians, Francis thinks. Why? I beg to differ. I beg to differ big time. For most Christians, they do tolerate it. Well, that's actually true, but that's because they're not good Christians. That's because they don't listen to the gospel. That's because they have a false gospel. That's because there's a low-key, unstated apostasy in both the clergy and the laity. That's because Christianity has been disregarded by Christians. Roman Catholicism has been disregarded by many Roman Catholics. We'll talk about a few other statements he made today and what they mean. But back to the positive for a second. I mean, this is just very black-pilling stuff to have a pope talking this way all the time. What is good in the world? Well, there's a very hip party that you're invited to, parish orphans and retrogrades. And that party is the 50K subs Rules for Retrogrades party. What do you say, Steph? It's going to be dope. We're going to have guests out the wazoo, which is a good thing to have guests out the wazoo rather than in the wazoo. We're gonna make two ginormous announcements. What do you say, Steph? I feel corny pumping it up myself because I'm not a hype man. I never self-brand.
Yeah, I think for us it's been a great thing because Tim's always said that he wanted to grow organically and just true growth, no like buying subs or anything like that. So for us, the 50K show is going to be a great deal. We're going to try to roll out some new features, a call-in feature. We're going to have some people that you know very well. Hopefully they can call into the show. I think, Tim, you have, like 2 humongous announcements that will be unveiled during the show. So that'll be super fun. We just wanted to make it super fun and just a real celebration for the organic growth that we've seen for your channel the last, gosh, was it 3 years now?
4. I mean,
4.
People, look, can you help me to just, for half a minute, people do subscribe because we're like 200 away now. Can you help me to articulate that when I was coming off of being basically my only channel, I had a channel, but I didn't use it, was Taylor Marshall's channel. And I was like, look, I want to do things really, really differently, right? Like no disrespect, but I want to do things really differently than all of the Catholic creators I see out there. Basically almost all the conservatives. There are a few people whose channel is run in a way that I like. I like the way Jay Dyer runs his channel, whether or not we agree, disagree on theology. Obviously, we disagree. I like he does what he wants to do. He says what he believes. His audience is there not because he's a captive creator, and he's like, well, I have to say this because my audience expects me to. He says what he wants, and they're there because they follow it. So it's not the cart before the horse with Jay. And then also a mutual friend of mine and Jay, who's a Catholic, is quite frankly, I like the way he runs his channel. He says what he wants to say. He covers content he wants to cover. I know the Catholic YouTube space very, very well. I know how everyone operates their channel. All of us, or almost all of us, talk about it behind the scenes. And
It's true.
and I'm just like, no offense, guys, I don't like the captive creator thing. A captive creator is someone that is like a captive audience, but in reverse. Someone that has to do nothing but Pope Francis shows for 6 months, or has to do nothing but SSPX shows for 6 months, or has to do whatever it was.
Keep the same talking points.
Yeah. Why? Because you're expected to. I'll do a slightly more frequent Pope Francis shows than I want because I know the news requires it. But I'm like, I want to be able to say, screw it. I'm not doing a Francis show for 2 months. And I've done that, you know?
It's true. It's funny. We'll get these emails from people. I'm a lawyer viewer and I don't appreciate X, Y, or Z. And our typical response to that always is like, hey, thanks for sticking with us as long as you did. If Tim's no longer the creator for you, then that's fine. You know, best of luck. Hope you find somebody you enjoy. The trick with doing all of this is really just being fully honest with what you think, even if it does make people upset. And so, you know, it's easy to, once you reach a certain amount of subscribers, to kind of keep that rolling and keep, you know, understanding the metrics and what people want to hear and what they really respond to keep that, you know, train going fast. But, you know, if you're doing things, I think the way we've always preferred to do this, I remember we had this conversation where you were like, yeah, I don't want to do this if I can't be just fully honest with people, even sometimes upsetting my own base. Like, it's not worth my time to do. So, you know, for us, 50,000 subscribers is a just huge deal. If you are somebody who watches the program often and want to help out the channel, that is the best way to help us right now, is just hit that subscribe button and we'll keep it going.
Also hit the subscribe star. I want to give to the channel 10 or 20 bucks a month, subscribe star and locals. That is the way you do it. Along with subscribing and liking the videos and commenting and interacting, because no cap, no cope, this channel has been, I'm like, look, I want to grow slow and stable. Of course I want a big channel. People will be like, what, your channel's so much smaller than your name. A lot of people that are really good at marketing, their channel's bigger than their name. I don't care. I mean, a very, very small part of me cares. 50,000's good for us and we're happy with it. Other channels might be like, well, that's obvious. That's half of the goal. That's half of the YouTube goal. I don't care. I'm really proud of it because people that come here, 99% of you know what you're going to get. You know that if you're like, hey, I don't like this, I'll hear you out. But I'm like, that's cool. If it's too big a deal for you to hear me say X, Y, Q, C, L, M, then like you have to go find content creators that inspire you. Like MJ says in The Last Dance, if I'm not the guy to inspire you, then best of luck, Ta, with my best blessings to go find someone else. But a lot of people are like, look, you're it for us. We're a retrograde household and we have loyal followers. And it's always because I said, no, I will not be a captive creator. I will strive even against fast metrics in order to ensure not being a captive creator. That's why the 50K celebration is such a celebration for 2020, guys. You know? Yeah. I don't know. We're really excited. And the two big announcements that we're bringing to the table are big. They're genuinely big announcements. I don't run these publicity stunts. Like, you know, some channels are kind of notorious for their publicity stunts. That's concomitant with the worldview we're talking about. Grow at all costs. I'm not a grow at all costs guy. I'm just not. So it's a big deal, and we're really excited, and we're going to have a bunch of call-in guests. A bunch of big ones, a bunch of good Catholic, you know, people like, you know, Anthony, people like, I don't know, Michael Knowles, people like my friend, quite frankly. Maybe I can get Jay Dyer to call. Just say what's up, just because I like when that happens. And then the biggest thing for you guys, aside from the two big announcements, is we have a call-in number. Do we have that number yet, Steph?
I'm working on that right now. I think what we're going to do is we're going to release the call-in number to the people who specifically support you on Subscribestar and Locals. I am still trying to figure out the software. It's going fine. I don't want to have the 50K show and then have all these great guests lined up to call in and radio silence. So I am a complete ignoramus when it comes to all this tech stuff. So anything that you're noticing new with the podcast, I am learning and doing my very best. So bear with us. It only took us, 3 years to get the audio worked out.
Just three.
Just 3 quick years for that to get worked out. So thank you for bearing with me, particularly during this time. But yeah, okay. So I hope to release, if you're a Subscribestar or Locals supporter, I hope to give you that number to call in, in the next week or so. I'm still practicing all my tech stuff here.
Yeah, because the show, there's, like everything with this channel, that we're live when we're live. You know, some of my dubious distinctions that come as times that I estimate the show will be. Sometimes it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later. Same thing with this 50K show. We're not like planning it for like, okay, it's got to be Thursday or Friday, and we'll do it a little before, a little after 50K. It will be the first show that we do after we hit our 50,000th subscriber, and it's going to be really, it's cool. There's a rawness to this program that we hope you find charming, and it's based on the fact that we keep it real. When we call it a 50,000 subscriber show, it will be the first show done as soon as we can do it after we hit 50,000 subscribers. It's that simple. So do hit the subscribe button. Do hit the like button. And please do support us, even if it's $5 a month only, 10, 20 on Locals and Subscribestar. If you want to support me in a way, just the man, if you want to donate, go to timothyjgordon.com. Okay, so it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a really big deal. The other thing is, make sure to, if you're interested in being there in Fatima at Marian Apparition site in Portugal, then you should go with Patrick Coffin and his crew, which includes Bishop Strickland, this summer, this May, on May 13th, Fatima Day. It's going to be dope. And the cool thing is he's spending fraction of a week in Portugal. He's spending the better part of a week in Spain, and the better part, a little over a week in France. And it's going to be an amazing time. You can go for all of them, or you can go for one of them, or you can go for two of them. So I heavily recommend going to Patrick Coffin. Let me get you the exact. Let me look at the site here. So 5 days in Portugal. Call 760-409-3766 or go to patrickcoffin.media/pilgrimage. The Portugal portion will be from May 11th to May 15th. He'll be with Joseph Strickland. So you will be there for the 107th anniversary of the Fatima apparition of Our Lady. 9 days in France from May 15th to May 23rd. That's the next portion. 9 days. Again, same number, 760-409-3766, or same site. Go to patrickcoffin.media/pilgrimage. Reasonably priced trip, group trip. And then the Spain portion closes it out from May the 23rd to May the 26th. 4 final days. Call that same number. Go to that same website. It's patrickcoffin.media/pilgrimage. Mention my name, Timothy Gordon, and you will get a hot deal. So it's really, really a great opportunity. Tell the agent Tim sent you, or Timothy, or some who try to be detractors online, Timmy sent you. She will ask how the pilgrim in question, that is you, prospectively, heard of it. So Tim is how you heard of it. Me is how you heard of it. Okay. Also, get yourself out of a blue state, get to a red state today. Go to realestateforlife.org. Now, back to Pope Francis saying, here's the most important takeaway of the newest Francis. Characterization upon characterization upon characterization of his own document, Fiducia Supplicans. He says that it's really only small, fractal, demographic, extreme portions of the church who reject it. That's interesting, isn't it? It's only small portions of the church who reject it. People immediately said, well, what do you mean? What, like this continent? The continent that is part of the expansive world, the expanding world, the third world, Africa, who you're always lauding as being so Catholic. They're trying to boost their infrastructure, cleanliness of their drinking water, but they're being lauded by Catholics and have been so for decades. It's the politically correct thing to do. Oh, Africa, they're so faithful. It's actually a politically correct truism that's true for once. They are faithful. But Francis doesn't like the Africans. Francis, from the onset of this pontificate, I would remind you, has been opposed by the Africans. It was 1 year into his pontificate at the extraordinary October Synod in 2014 that there's an article, many articles to this effect, which was titled, "The Africans May Well Save the Church," because Cardinal Sarah and others stood up at the October 2014 Extraordinary Family Synod and they said, this isn't a synod on the family. This is a synod on how to break the family, how to enable Catholics to get divorces and enable those divorced Catholics to go get the communion, confession. No, we say. The Africans also said no to the relatio, the midterm report. And that midterm report said we need to focus on, this is more relevant for Fiducia Supplicans, the positive dimensions of Homo sapien relationships. Direct quote. What? All the Africans rebelled. It created world press. They took the line out for the final document. Relatio is halfway through the synod. The final document took the language out. And Francis was reportedly angry. His buddies were reportedly angry. Cardinal Casper, the brain trust of at least the first half of this pontificate, was upset. And he said, these Africans, they don't, he said something very similar, but less politically correct to what Francis just said yesterday. They don't really understand. They're not really relevant to the church. They don't get it. They have a backwards approach to Homo sapienism. No, Cardinal Casper, it's front ways. But remember that. Hold it at the front of your brain. 2014, Cardinal Casper mad that the Africans hold the line on this most egregious sin of Homo sapienism. 2024, 10 years later, Pope Francis, the boss, El Jefe, saying basically the same, more or less racist thing. We don't typically freak out about racism on this channel, so I don't use the boomer term like that's racist. But it is, whether you know, irrespective of how you feel about it, it is pretty genuinely lame to say, oh, the Africans aren't cool because they hold the line on sexual teaching. No, I think that's the coolest thing about the Africans. I love Cardinal Sarah for his willingness to hold the line, which has waxed and waned over the last 10 years. Cardinal Sarah started out really strong. Then I think maybe to regain favor, he chilled for a while and said some nice things about Pope Francis that were maybe a bit of a stretch. And then, you know, he came back strong, and he's been kind of went through that sinusoid roller coaster several times throughout the last 10 years. But hold that at the front of your brain. 2014, the Africans hold the line on the positive, affirmative aspect of the good aspects of Homo sapien relationships. 2014, that language is mirrored closely, almost identically, in that famous, paragraph 37, 31, 41 in Fiducia. Someone remind me, it's one of those. I said, oh, look, hello, hi there, look who's back. It's the language of the affirmative aspects, the stable aspects of Homo sapien relationships. That vanished like a David Copperfield trick from the Relatio in 2014, and 10 years later, on its, not quite its anniversary, it's back in Fiducia Supplicans. And now Francis is kind of like the vanishing trick of Cardinal Casper, decrying the Africans. He took that away. He said, oh, this is so embarrassing. They had a hot mic. It was a hot mic. He said, oh, the Africans don't really know what's going on in the church. He said something just like that. And he was embarrassed later, and it was a great embarrassment. And the media played it down, but right-wing media still picked it up. Francis is saying something almost as bad when he looks and he says, well, look, there are these fringe groups. They're the only ones that don't love Fiducia Supplicans. And you respond, as you read it in your mind, no, Holy Father, it's everyone. It's everyone aside from two groups. I don't mean in the church, not just two groups in the church, two groups in the whole world. Liberals, like lefties, which includes left Catholics, that's one group. Well, they love Homo sapienism. They love the fact that if you tell people Homo sapienism is okay, you're paving the wide path to hell. They love that. That's the goal of a lefty, is to get as many people to hell. They've been tasked with this on behalf of the demons. They love that. And then you have the very, very confused Catholics who are not lefties, who are Pope-splainers. Cope-splainers could be their other moniker. It's just Cope, and a lot of them are new Catholics. They don't really know what's up. But they know that it's good, generally speaking, to defend the pontificate. They're sincere. A lot of them are good people, unlike left Caths. A lot of them have been in the church under 2 years. They don't even know about the October Synod of 2014. They don't even know about the October Synod of 2015. They don't even know what Cardinal Daniels admitted to about the Mafia Club, the Sankt Gallen Mafia. They don't even know about Giulia Maloney's excellent research and articles on the Sankt Gallen Mafia. They don't know any of this. They don't even know what came out in the Summer of Shame in 2018, a lot of them, that Pope Francis lied and covered for and then reactivated Cardinal McCarrick, basically enabling him and lying for him afterwards to go and bebother more young seminarians after he'd bebothered young boys like James Grine. And lied about it afterwards. And Cardinal Vigano called him out. And Cardinal Vigano produced the receipts. They don't know this. Very few of the Pope-splainers know it. Most of them are young converts or reverts that came in within the last 18 months and don't know. Now, there are those Pope-splainers who I don't think have good faith, who know about this stuff and were themselves bothered about it at the time, and then they just explain it away because, I don't know, it's most profitable for them. But I think most Cope-splainer, Pope-splainers are just truly ignorant and good people. But these are the only two people in the entire world, on the entire globe, that are like, yeah, what Francis is doing is good. Centrists are like, you got a out of control Pope, right? Isn't that what's going on? I mean, I have neighbors that are kind of center political, Protestant guys, the center right. They're like, oh, your Pope's kind of crazy, isn't he? Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's a whole thing, man. I don't want to get into it. I don't even like talking about it on YouTube, much less to neighbors and stuff, but yes. And then anybody on the secular right has basically the right conclusion. Oh, doesn't your Pope kind of love communists and pretty much hate faithful Catholics? Doesn't he call them like shit eaters and stuff? Like, yeah, you heard that? Yeah, coprophagiacs is what he calls faithful Catholics. Or doesn't he say that young people, young married people who go to the Latin Mass have psychological problems? Yeah, he says that. If you love tradition, you have a psychological problem. He said that. He said that multiple times. Wasn't your Pope doesn't he have like a really torrid personal history? And he hasn't been back to his native Argentina ever in this pontificate? Yeah. It's a real story. Wasn't he like a nightclub bouncer? And there's rumors about what kinds of nightclub? Yeah, it's hard to find. But he was a nightclub bouncer. Doesn't he sometimes also call people coprophiliacs, which means if you criticize him, you like making love to shit? Yeah, that's real too. He said that 2 or 3 times. Hasn't your Pope said that he thinks there needs to be global legislation enabling Homo sapien civil unions? Yeah, he said that in a documentary in February and March of 2020. But Francesco, he came out and he said that. We need a law. He was talking in the global stage that is for Homo sapien civil unions. Well, now that's just his private opinion, though. Yeah, no, that's not a Catholic private opinion to hold. It's not a teaching. But he recently made a teaching on the corpus of private opinions that is very concomitant with it, that is consonant with it. The one you would expect someone that has that personal belief to have. Oh, what's that? That even though, prelates, priests, and bishops cannot bless the civil unions of these SS couples. They can bless these couples if the situation is left sufficiently vague as to whether or not it's a civil union. In other words, if a couple just goes up there, maybe they've been recently married at civil law in a civil union. Okay, as long as it's sufficiently vague and they're not looking like they're in marital clothes, they could have been married at civil law yesterday, they can go get blessings together. And this was another. Let me read for you. So Pope Francis has gone through several iterations since Fiducia came out about a month ago of saying, no, you guys are getting it wrong. You're crazy. And he can never say you're getting it wrong. You're crazy with, he always uses these Mott and Bailey claims. A Mott and Bailey claim is where the Mott is an obvious, easily defensible claim that if you transmogrify, you can make it into a Bailey claim, a not easily defensible, much bolder, non-obvious claim that not everyone will agree with, but it sounds kind of like it. All cults use it. I've been debating the red pill guys lately. They use the Mott and Bailey claim. Dictators have always used it, and the dictator Pope Francis is no different. He uses Mott and Bailey claims, which, he could say something really obvious like, look, Fiducia supplicans did nothing. This is the Mott. The Mott's like the stronghold in a castle. It's a strong, easy thing to say. Look, We can bless any sinners we want. That's not blessing the sin. Duh, totally. That's easy. The Bailey claim, though, is when he goes, now, we do have to make a change to the 2,000-year-old teaching on blessings. We have to change it here with Fiducia supplicans. We want to bless these two particular sinners together at the same time, which we've never done. That change needs to happen. Oh, and then everyone goes, oh, you're blessing the couple? And he goes, yes, we're blessing the couple together, but we're still just blessing the individuals, but insieme, together. No, that's a Bailey. That's indefensible. You know how I know so? Because in February of 2021, Francis's CDF at the time, Cardinal Ladaria, said in a CDF document, no, that exact situation, that exact constellation of facts cannot go toward a blessing in some. You cannot have any blessings insieme, together, of a couple. Can't do it. Can't ever be done. There's some primary reasons, ontological reasons. There are some secondary reasons, which are reasons of appearance, scandal. Both primarily and secondarily, you can never bless an irregular situation couple, which means both Homo sapien couples or adulterers. You know, horny middle-aged guys with their new bride, or horny middle-aged gals with their new at-law husband. You can't ever do blessings for these kinds of people. It doesn't matter whether or not you come up with different categories. If we're talking about the genus of irregular couple, which includes mainly these two groups, you can't do the blessing together. And guess what happened to Cardinal Ladaria after he said that? One, Heiner Wilmer, the leader of the German Synodal Way, did a mass blessing at over 80 provinces in Germany. Maybe it was 800. 800 churches in Germany where they all blessed Homo sapien couples just to do this to his boss, the doctrinal chief, Cardinal Ladaria. That was in October and November of 21. Guess what Francis followed up by doing after this German Synodal Way rebel, who should be kicked out of the church, did this to Cardinal Ladaria, who said, no blessings. Francis said, Cardinal Ladaria, you're out. The very next month, you're out, you're fired. And later that month, guess who he said was going to have his job? Oh, German Synodal Way leader, Heiner Wilmer. So he signaled to those with eyes to see. It's the master-slave dialectic. It's a Hegelian dialectic. I'm on the side of the slave. I'm on the side of the outlaw. I'm on the side of the rebel. I'm giving the rebel your job as he basically cuts your throat. Former doctrinal number 2. And he said, I'm going to give Heiner Wilmer your job. He didn't end up doing it because of some mystery intervention staged by Cardinal Pell was still alive at that time, Cardinal Mueller. For some reason, Francis listened, but he gave us the next most radical pro-Homo sapien prelate in the church, Cardinal Fernandez, who's written all of his controversial documents as a ghostwriter. This is Tuccio, who has the book of prawnography. He has the book of prawn, including a scene of child prawn. I thought he would be removed. Francis's shamelessness knows no limits. There's a scene of child prawn, not just child prawn, but a scene in Tuccio, the new CDF, incoming CDF replacement for Cardinal Ladaria. In his book, there's a scene, literally, of lovemaking between our Lord and a child, with the Virgin Mary looking on, blessing it. That's all that needs to be said. And Cardinal Tuccio had made jokes before about his Heal Me With Your Mouth book about making out, which did surface a year ago. He joked to Francis, he's like, wait till they get a load of my other books. Well, obviously, this one, the child prawn book that he wrote, fictional prawn, is one of those ones he was referring to, because yes, it is worse than his makeout book. Who wants to listen to makeout books? Who wants to read them from their priest or the number two in the church? This church has, I mean, not this church. It's Francis's magisterium has obviously jumped the shark. It's clown world. It's clown church. And so now that Francis is seeking to recharacterize and recapitulate and rebrand Fiducia Supplicans, he will not just leave it behind. He'll say, hey, look, this was a blessing of individuals together. What are individuals together called? A couple. Guess what? The magisterium ruled in magisterial documents there can never be individuals blessed together. And Francis, less than 3 years later, fired that CDF and reversed teaching. Well, the whole point of being Catholic is that teaching is not supposed to be reversible. It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be simple, and it's not. Nothing's simple in the church at this point. So that's the Fiducia Supplicans update. He did one more reiteration in his treatment, Francis did, of Fiducia Supplicans, where he said he took one more pass at this. He will not just say, no, this is wrong. You're not allowed to do blessings of SS couples. You can't do it. You misunderstood me. He'll always say, look, you misunderstood me. And then you're like, yes, tell us how we misunderstood you. And then he'll say, they can only do blessings of individuals together. It's this simple. If a priest is allowed to do a blessing of individuals together, then that is a blessing of the couple. And it was outlawed, whether or not it's like arguing how many angels are dancing on the head of a pin. Well, is it 9,999 or 10,000? We can't see that. We don't see force lightning come out of the priest's blessing hands and, shoot out and hit both of the Homo sapiens at the same time. That's not how blessings work. How the teaching on blessings worked from 2021, Cardinal Ladario, was you're not allowed to perform a blessing to a couple in an irregular situation at the same time. These two dudes, like Adam and Steve, can come for a blessing. They can even carpool there. They can get the blessing even while they live shacked up in an irregular, mortally sinful situation. They just have to go in a line separately, like a confession line. That's what the teaching has always been. That's what it is. Francis specifically knocked that down. So the people that talk about it like we can see the metaphysical force lightning blessing coming out of the fingers of the priest, they're stupid. And this is what the Cope-splainers have been doing. They talk about it like, no, I know who's blessed at once. It's the couple. It's the sinner, not the sin. I don't know what you're talking about, man. The point is, the priest is not allowed to perform that procedure according to the magisterium of the Roman Catholic Church, unless they're like one at a time. Two at a time is not licit. Were you going to say something, Steph?
Yeah, I think people with good sense, when we're talking about the blessing together, why even say together if that's not a major part of what they're trying to do, right? So all these people arguing about individual as a couple, they're making great pains to say that these two people can come together. So if we're only talking about individuals in this instance, then why even include that sort of language in the document or give that sort of instruction that it can be done together? It absolutely contradicts what they claim they're trying to do here by even including that language. It's so obvious.
Right. And wait, hold on. I want to run this back. I want to iterate with you now. Why would Francis, if he's making no change, why would he say, no, this is a development? And why did Tuccio say the day after the document came out, it is a development. It is a reversing development of the teaching from 2021. Unless, and like you say, together is the battleground. You can do it separately. You've been able to do it as priests for 2,000 years. Why do they need to self-consciously, explicitly reverse the teaching unless that reversal is meaningful?
Right. Yeah. I think for most of us, we read things and we are just, as native English speakers, we understand how that works, the word together. I often wonder when I see some of the younger Catholics talk about this, it's almost as if they've never just been experienced a lie in their life. Like I'm 41 years old. I understand how this works. People can say, hey, I'm not doing X, Y, or Z, and then go off and do it. And then when you say, hey, you did it, people still could say, even the Pope could still say, no, I didn't do that. Like, that's called a lie. When you're bringing specific language into a document and you're releasing it to the world, and an entire continent is responding a certain way, it's very clear, I think, to most of us with a couple of brain cells to rub together what's going on and what the change was. And like I said, the very word together is the battleground. That is the battleground. There's no need for two people to be standing next to each other as a couple together. If you are allowed to do something individually, like confession is individual, right? If we come in and we just say, yeah, go to confession together as a couple, but you're sitting right next to each other and you're getting a joint absolution, it's obvious. It just should be very obvious to people how.
But what I'm saying is what happened. This is why I brought up the force lightning, Steph. It doesn't matter what's happening with the invisible force lightning. Are your sins being nullified by the priest together? No. I don't care whether or not the priest is even performing the metaphysical sacramental action of blessing or absolving at the same time.
Right.
What I care about is procedurally. It was a reversal.
Right,
If confession's a good analogy. The analogate in the analogy works like this. If all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you can go to confession with your wife and sit in there. And then that's a clear reversal of the policy. You're not allowed to have a single other soul in the confessional. Why are you reversing this policy? I think it's nefarious, but whether it's nefarious or not, it's a reversal, and it's an illicit reversal. You're not allowed to reverse the form of the sacrament. That's part of the form, the unicity, the singularity. Then if they're like, well, let's argue about, but you're still being forgiven individually, even if your wife's sitting there. I don't care, dude, and I also don't know. That's ultra vires. I don't know where the forgiveness is happening, where the invisible lightning is going. All I'm saying is there's something we can agree about here. Francis, in that case, would have reversed the procedural, the doctrinal discipline of confession, just as he reversed the procedural, that is to say, doctrinal disciplinary teaching on blessings. That's a fact. That's where you have to call your friends, whether they're left Catholics who are bullshitting you or just confused, new converts or reverts to the church that have never been lied to and don't know what a lie feels like. That's where you just have to stop them. I'm just talking about the procedure.
Or just accepting that in the history of the Catholic Church, we've had plenty of bad popes, and this just happens to be one of them, and not be ignorant of history and look like you have a chromosome issue by not being able to just see what's going on with these documents. There's no, like you said, there's no reason to release a document and say, oh, there's nothing has changed. There will be no further questions. Obviously, something has changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed. There's no further questions. Things have changed. I like how you always put it. Have these people never been lied to? I'm not even talking about outright lie. Have these people never been hoodwinked with the Mott and Bailey claim? I know you guys might not know this term, but it's a fallacious way that cults, demagogues, and tyrants, despots, typically work. But it's how cults work. The big, obvious, defensible claim, which can be easily transmogrified after ratification. You get everyone's approval on it. Then you go, okay, so this is really what we have here. Into a Bailey claim that's much less defensible, and that for whatever reason, the hoi polloi's too dumb to understand what's going on. you shift. It's a shell game. You shift out the Mott for the Bailey, and you're like, okay, well, you ratified this. Liberals use it in opposite. They'll start out with the less defensible claim. You chase them back to the Mott, to their stronghold, their castle, and they'll be like, look, this is all I was saying. Don't jump on my case. Francis uses really the Bailey and Mott. He says something defensible first, then gets the ratification of all the Pope splainers. And then he says, okay, so this is what it is. And then he goes back and forth between Mott and Bailey. I hope that's a clear enough explanation.
Yeah, like you said, it's like somebody punching you in the face, and they're like, I didn't just hit you in the face. What are you talking about? It's like, have people just not been gaslit before? Has this... It's so funny to me to watch people fall for this and not even see what's happening to them. Like, they're doing X and telling you they're not doing X, and people are like, oh, they're not doing X because they said they're not doing it. Immediately, all the people who are going to abuse this practice of the joint blessings immediately sprung to action. It's like what we were talking about with the vaccine, right? How is it that everybody, all of the forces were in movement immediately? Because this had been the plan all along. We didn't know about it, right? So the troops were mobilized, social media companies, all of these things were ready to roll out this new thing. It was immediate that this document was released. And what happened? What happened? Exactly what they thought was going to happen happened. We had all of this depravity happening in churches, like photographic evidence, and all these people are like, well, they're just taking advantage of something. Like, no, how about just the more reasonable view that they knew that this was going to happen, that this is a change, and
that they were notified because James Martin, that naughty pet thing, he goes and visits with Francis all the time. He was just there at the October Synod. He was a special representative. What happens, Francis says, be ready. I'm coming out with Fiducia in late November, early December. Be ready to do all your blessings to your little fantastic friends. That's what happened. That's how it was. And the Pope splainers are just cope splainers. Every time Pope Francis deals with James Martin S.J., he's just saying, look, be ready. I'm sending you this setup. I'm going to give you the dime. You finish the bunny. I'm giving you the layup, man. You just lay the ball in. That's your role in this revolution. That's what happened. How do I know? Because I'm not a moron. Because I wasn't born yesterday. That's how people will ask me, how are you calling these things right? I'm like, some of them are more impressive than others. Most of them are rather unimpressive because I've been lied to before. Because I know I used to play in a band. Nightclub owners would try to hoodwink us. Yeah, get your money at 3, and you go 3 a.m. after you play a late night show, and then you go there. Oh, you're gonna have to get it tomorrow. You're paying us now. I know what you're doing. They've never been hoodwinked before, and a lot of them are just young people in their 20s. They grew up. You have to understand culturally. A lot of these are faithful, good people. They grew up on the internet, so they didn't have experiences like us.
Right.
Didn't run around, scrape their knees. Get into trouble, get in street fights, go live life.
The lack of rebellion. It's funny.
It's a lack of rebellion too. Yeah.
I always joke about this with Tim. It's like the kids of the 80s. Like, we were outside during the day. Like, our parents just locked us outside. There was a natural inbuilt like rebellion. I mean, for better or for worse, however you want to say that, and distrust and skepticism. It's interesting to me, this new generation. It's funny. It is funny to me to watch. Like, they don't have that. They don't have the skepticism and the kind of natural rebelliousness. And obviously there's a time and a place for that. And I know people would argue about that within the Catholic Church, but it also makes me wonder, if any of these young guys who are out there just with their heads in the sand, it's actually kind of effeminate. It's sad to see. But if they have their head in the sands on this pope, I often wonder, how would they handle, let's say, a pope we all agree on was a bad pope. If you were alive during his time, would these be the same people who would be out there, telling all of the rest of us to close our eyes and shut our ears? It's just funny. I find it to be an interesting thing with some of the younger Catholics. It seems like they don't they've never been lied to before.
I find it to be upsetting. I find it to be upsetting because it's like, okay, they're the left Caths or the knowing Pope splainers. You know what they're doing. It's just a grift. But with the ones that are legitimately hoodwinked, because a lot of times they're younger, haven't lived life IRL much, they literally are victims of this grift where they're like, no, the Pope can never be wrong. Like, that's just not the teaching. That's not Roman Catholicism.
No.
Like there were Catholic apologetics in the 90s and early 2000s when a lot of these kids weren't born yet. Were like, we'd tell Protestants, and I was barely in the church then, but you'd listen to Catholics telling Protestants, we do not worship the Pope,
right?
Man.
We're still telling Protestants and Catholic. It's so funny to be in that position where we're telling Protestants, we don't worship the Pope. He's not infallible on everything he does. And now we're in the position where we're having to tell. And again, I applaud some of these younger male Catholics because they're right on a lot of other issues. But with the Pope, it's like we're having to actually tell Protestants and young male Catholics the same thing. And when you're in that position,
we don't worship the Pope.
Right, when you're in a position as a young male Catholic that you're having to be schooled along with Protestants, stop. Reevaluate yourself.
Rethink your life. We do not worship the Pope. It's not the same thing. If Jesus himself ever said anything that sounded like yes and no at the same time, then you would take pause and you'd be like, I need to rethink what I'm saying. It sounds like he's saying yes and no at the same time. We're not a voluntarist faith. That's Islam. Yes and no can never be said at the same time. So I really need to address what he's saying. But guess what? Jesus specifically promised us, parish orphans and retrogrades, that he would never say yes and no at the same time. That yes and no, ostensibly being said at the same time, always comes from whom? The devil. Let your yes mean yes, your no mean no. Moral theology is very easy, Jesus is saying. It should never sound like a priest, prelate, magisterial officer, member of the Vatican, Pope, number 2 in the church, Cardinal Secretary of State, is saying yes and no at the same time. Pope Francis, for 11 years now, in February, it'll be 11 years, March, I guess, has sounded with every momentous statement he's made like he's saying yes and no at the same time. Jesus said if someone ever comes along that sounds like they're saying yes and no even once, they're preaching the anti-gospel. If they sound like they're saying yes and no even once, that's from the devil. What I don't understand about these hoodwinked Catholics is I have nothing but love for you guys. Yes and no cannot be said at the same time in the same way. Jesus never did it. None of his teachings are complex. Jesus' teachings were simple. All a pope and all of his those who subserve him, meaning the Vatican, which we didn't even have Vatican curial officials for the first millennium of the church, but all the bishops around the world and all the priests and all the deacons, they all have to subserve Jesus's clarity. And if there's a pope that even once sounded like he's saying yes and no at the same time, he got anathematized later. Remember? Like the cadaver synod? Can you imagine what's going to happen to Francis, the pontificate of Francis, after his pontificate ends? I'm only imagining now, but I can reason by proportion. It's much, much worse than what happened at the cadaver synod, because that was over a single vagary. Honorius, single vagary. All the famous bad Medici popes, a lot of them didn't even have a vagary of teaching. Do you understand? Do you see how this works? Francis, it has been every single teaching, every single one. You guys, none of you guys probably even know what happened 2 months before Amoris Laetitia came out. In February of 2016, 2 months before April 2016, with the publication date of Amoris Laetitia, Pope Francis said condoms can be used. He said condoms can be used in the case of the Zika virus. And he cited a non-apposite example of nuns who in the Congo were teaching like the Congolese rebels who would sometimes rape them, and they were allowed to use condoms in a way that this is what I do. I'm a moral philosopher. That is not illicit. That's never been illicit for someone to like attach a condom in the case that they might get raped because they're not trying to have sex. The formal act and the teleology are still licit in that defensive act. Francis literally said February 16th, 17th of, I can't believe it's so far in the past now, 2016. He said, you can use a married couple in South America can choose to have sex using condoms, but for fear of Zika virus and microcephaly, they could just have sex rather than abstain at that time or use NFP in a non-fertile time of the month. They can use contraception, which you can never plan to have sex and use. The Congolese nuns never did that. They weren't planning to have sex. And the next day, when all the Pope-splainers at the time in the 2016 landscape were out there saying he meant NFP, in the middle of a Pope-splaining session, Chris Albert and Patrick Madrid were talking about it. He meant NFP. The Vatican released a statement through, I think, Monsignor Lombardi, maybe it was Greg Burke, saying Pope Francis meant what he said yesterday, and he specifically meant rubbers, condoms. And I called him in, and I was like, Mr. Chris Albert, look, dude, I love you. You're embarrassing yourself. Look at this story. And he started going, no, it's dude, Tim, it meant NFP. I go, Chris, shut up. Look at this story. It was at a commercial break. I was getting seizure medication for Abby in a CVS near my house in California. And I'm like, I got to go. I got to go talk to the pharmacist. Look at this story. I just texted it to you or something like that. I got him the story somehow. I got to go. Hung up the phone, waited 5 minutes, got the seizure medication, went back out to my car, and Chris Albert and he'd called Patrick Madrid in the meanwhile, and he was freaked out. He was like, okay. He's like shuffling papers around. Okay, so I just got a call from Tim Gordon, and I'm looking at the story, and yes, this says specifically that married couples can choose to have sex by way of rubber condoms, and they doubled down on it, and the Catholic Church is still the church, people, and he and Patrick Madrid did not know WTF to say because they had been Pope-splaining. Pope Francis will sell out all of his Pope-splaining smackbackers because he'll always go more extreme. He has a goal. The St. Gallen Mafia put him there with a goal. He's going there. I know where he's going. I know where the finish line is because I've read St. Gallen Mafia. So he's always going to turn on his supporters because you're saying, well, he's not going to do the next thing. He will. He's going there. He's doing female deacons there's going to be a vagary. It's coming out this year. I told you that. It'll be that the bishop doesn't touch the female's head all the way or some bullshit. But it will be female deacons. Then later, a bunch of female deacons will be running our Novus Ordo churches. And you morons who are defending it will say, well, they're not allowed to do that. It's exactly how the Mott and Bailey Francis pontificate works.
Well, it's funny because they're always, I think in the Pope-splainer position, they're always in the position of having to move the goalpost, right? We're just saying the same thing all along. Like, yep, confusion, derision, chaos, just constant from this pontificate. Just the same thing we've been saying for 3 years. Every time something comes out, it's, really flowery language intended to confuse and cause a mess. And the Pope-splainers are constantly moving goalposts, trying to make up, down, trying to tell everybody what they're reading and what they're seeing happening in the church. The feminism of the church isn't what we're seeing, and that Pope Francis is actually against all of these things. Well, it's, the church is more feminized than ever, and the head of the church, it's his fault. He needs to actively fix this. And he's doing everything in his power, all of the things that he's releasing to actually encourage more women and destruction of our church. So I don't know where I guess they get wrapped up in individual articles and individual documents where they're just trying to make up and down. I think for our part here, we're looking at things as a whole. I know that in our family, if something's going wrong, you'll just look right at it. It's like, hey, I'm the head of this family and I need to correct this ship. There are obvious things that need to be done to make the church more masculine and just more in line with Christ's teachings that the Pope is failing to do. Well, in the meantime, let's all just agree to agree on this. He's wasting his time with, blessing of whether you want to agree or disagree, whether it's couples or individuals. Like, really, do we need that? Is that really what we need to be putting our focus on right now when we have Susan of the Parish Council destroying our individual parishes and the faith of young men is at an all-time low?
Well, he's about to be Deacon Susan from the Parish Council because he's going forward with that. It's about to be, yes, he already anathematized, more or less, soft anathematized anyone outside Africa who's not willing to do the blessings. So, I get what you're trying to do, Steph. You're trying to find a common ground and say, I don't want to beg the question. I don't want to load up my terms. I just want to say, here's something we should be able to ask even the Pope-splaineriest Pope-splainers. Why isn't the head of the organization taking culpability for the organization failing? But that doesn't work. That common ground doesn't work because they're saying, no, the organization's thriving. Things are great. And, things are great because the Pope deserves not blame. Blame is for bad things, but things are great in the church, so credit. So these are truly deluded individuals, rather than saying like the church has lost all its moral standing, aside from metaphysical moral standing, which can't be stripped from it. But like naturally, no one outside the Roman Catholic Church looks to Pope Francis and is invited in. The only way through God's good graces that people are becoming Catholic, and one of my buddies, Mike Pentile, on the Seamask show, just came back to Mass last Sunday. He did not do so because of Francis. If you ask him, Mike, did you come back because of Pope Francis? He laughs. There are Catholics coming back because it's the one true faith. They come back because of the fullness of the sacraments, the fullness of communion, apostolic succession, and the universal jurisdiction of the head bishop of Rome. They all say, I'm coming back in spite of Francis. I've helped to bring several wayward Catholics back. I've converted several Protestants. And say, over the last 11 years, did Francis have anything to do with this? Yes. To the man, they say, yes. Francis had he was a negative vector force against this. I came back to the church in spite of Francis. I have not talked to a single convert or revert who's come into the church over the last 11 years and said they did it because of Pope Francis. That's the Pope Francis challenge. Talk to converts or reverts who have come in over the last 11 years. Say, did you come in because of Pope Francis or in spite of Pope Francis? You are going to get a 100-0 poll result. 100% of the facts will say, I came in despite Pope Francis's best efforts to keep me out. To say that God wills the diversity of religions. To say that Martin Luther is an exemplar of the Christian life. To fix Martin Luther's face on Vatican stamps. He's telling Protestants to stay Protestant. With this worship center, with this accord that he signed, he's literally telling Protestants, non-Christians, God wills that you stay your diverse non-Christian religion. He's literally saying that. God be with us. Heaven help us. Fiducia supplicans should be the calling card. I thought it would be Amoris Laetitia in April 2016. There are still people Pope-splaining after that. I thought it would be the Summer of Shame in 2018 where he got caught in lies. There's still people Pope-splaining after that. Now I think it's Fiducia supplicans, and I'm still surprised that there are people Pope-splaining after that. How long, O Lord, until we are delivered? He will be, at some point, Cadaver Synod treated in some way, I think far worse than the Cadaver Synod. I don't have special knowledge. I don't have magic, arcane knowledge. All I know is yes has to mean yes, no has to mean no. No Pope-splainer can answer this. I ask all of them. So when Jesus said that there should never be a yes and a no offered at the same time, because this is intended to confuse the listener, and it always comes from the devil. He says that directly. How do you square this with the Francis pontificate? Not one time where a yes was tendered with a no by the Pope. Ceaselessly, a yes is being tendered with a no. Yes, but no, but yes, but no, but yes, but no. Do you think that the fact that Catholics are stymied by this is an accident? No. Parish orphans and retrogrades, let your yes mean yes, your no mean no. This means on Fiducia supplicants, you should have absolute clarity. The document is procedurally evil, irrespective of what it purports to do metaphysically. We have clarity. God wills clarity. Deus Vult.